Hey, what's going on, traders? It's Johnny here with Trader X. Thank you guys so much for tuning back into the channel. I hope you guys are all having a beautiful Monday today. And I wanted to make this video to go ahead and update you guys on my day trading today and how it went, as well as where I think the Nasdaq could be headed. So to get right into it, as you guys can see, it was a green day today. I was up $50.34, and that consisted of trading the Nasdaq ETFs SQQQ and TQQQ, right? And so these are all my field orders here. You guys can see the timestamps on the left here, the price points that I bought in and out over here, and then the ETF that I was currently trading right here in the middle. So that's there for your reference. You guys can pause that and take a look at my trades if you want. But other than that, I'm going to get right into it. So how was I able to make money with the overall Nasdaq being, down today? And not only was it down, it was very choppy. And so I want to go ahead and explain to you guys exactly how I was able to make $50 even in this market condition. So what I noticed when I woke up, so you guys can see the large increase in volume right around here is when the market opened, right? So up until then, this is all pre-market hours and the after hours of yesterday, right? And so what we can notice is that the Nasdaq was consistently selling off. So this thing was making these lower highs, lower lows, right? And then before it would continue to pick back up to the middle VWAP, become overextended before selling off again. And so what I viewed in the morning was this thing was selling off all pre-market before it actually started to break above the middle VWAP. And then right at 6:30 market open, with the increase in volume and all the traders starting to hop on, it actually drove the Nasdaq all the way down, right, to touch the bottom VWAP before it ultimately found a support and curled back up. And so as this thing picked back up here, this is when I decided to take my first trade on the inverse ETF. And the reason why I saw value in it was because of the fact that all the pre-market hours, the Nasdaq was selling off, right? The Nasdaq future itself was making these lower highs, lower lows. So as this thing continued to sell off and touch the bottom VWAP before it reversed, it started to become overextended now at these areas, right? According to these previous patterns, it's tended to struggle when it approaches these areas. Now, it doesn't mean that it has to do that, but it's something we can base our trade off of, right? We're not just going in there blindly saying, oh, let's buy the inverse ETF. There's a reason behind it. And the reason is, all the pre-market, it was selling off. And then we had this nice sell-off right at market open. It ultimately picked back up, became overextended again. And that's when I decided to get in the inverse ETF. So as this thing became overextended, I bought in. And as it sold off here, I averaged up. But this thing, as you guys can see, actually ended up popping again. So I had to cut my losses, and then ultimately I got back in once I saw this thing get rejected even harder here. So as this thing pushed up, made a higher high and got rejected, what I noticed is it didn't struggle to really break below the EMA. So you guys see how over here was riding this blue line up, right, and bouncing on it? This is the blue line's the EMA line. So what I was looking for was this thing to break below it and now start using it to get rejected, right, as a form of resistance rather than support like it did here. So as this thing broke below, I averaged up, and then as this thing continued to get rejected by the EMA, that made me a little more comfortable, right? Because I knew that direction was now in my favor, and I ultimately loaded off on most of my shares around this area. The reason for that is it's bounced right around these general area one, two, three times before, right? And so it would be very naive to not sell out of your shares around here, given the fact that you've had three warnings before that it could potentially reverse, right? And so as this thing approached these, less of a good deal areas for the inverse ETF, that's ultimately what I did, right? So I got into the inverse ETF, as you guys can see, right around these areas. So you guys are actually seeing these are the price points I bought in and out. And so as you guys can see, as it finally broke up above the EMA and started to indicate signs of an uptrend, that's when I averaged up and started to sell out of my shares as it approached this less of a good deal, right? Right around these areas, it typically tends to get rejected. And so that's why I did my part in locking in my profit, right? And so that is how I was able to make the $50 or majority of the 50. Then ultimately, as I was out of all my shares on SQQQ, the inverse ETF, now that the Nasdaq was a more of a good deal, I decided to get into TQQQ, right? So as this thing continued to fall, I got into TQQQ, and as this thing continued to pick up to the middle VWAP, I decided to cut my shares there. But I wasn't in with a heavy dollar amount on my TQ position. That's why I didn't make too much money on that one, right? About $6 on that. So it was a light position size. It was mostly just to practice, right? A bit of like a warm-up trade, even though that was actually my last trade of the day. And the reason why I stopped trading there was I was green on the day. I like to start off my week green like any other trader does. And the market itself is not in the best area. And what I mean by that is if we take a step back and look at the bigger time frame, you can see that it has been trading in between this channel, right? Acting very bearish, probably since around the start of April, the Nasdaq's been taking very hard. And so what it does is as it approaches these more oversold areas, it'll become choppy, but it will ultimately start to make these higher highs, right? Before it approaches, the top resistance line and then ultimately gets rejected again. And so what I think around this area can happen is based off like last time, we can see some sort of fall before we ultimately actually start to pick up. So heading into tomorrow, I can expect some form of fall before it ultimately bounces and continues to pick back up. Does that have to happen for sure? No. This thing can actually just pick up right up to that spot now, or it can continue to sell off even. Nothing has to happen with the market, and that's what you guys need to understand. It's more of like, okay, let me analyze what's happened so far and go take my trade based according to that. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to go over today. So I hope you guys were all pretty much able to end green today because I know it wasn't, the best day necessarily to trade, but yeah, I hope you guys were able to learn something from this video today. If you haven't already, please consider dropping a like and subscribing to this channel. We are very new and every subscription counts. But yeah, other than that, that's everything I wanted to talk about. I hope you guys all have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will see you guys tomorrow for my market recap. So see you guys then.